Alright, so for today, we're going to do a facial harmony for Courtney Ryan, and we're going to see what her facial harmony score is. So for her overall facial rating is a 6.6. How rare is that? That's 1 in 20 faces, or 1 in 20 people, and percentage of people is the top 5% of people. Alright, her side facial score, 70%. Her front facial score, 54%. Her total facial harmony score is 60%. Her facial dimorphism, how feminine the face is a 6.5. Body fat factors, 6.5. Miscellaneous features, 9. Tier list, tier 1, ideal, tier 2, near ideal, tier 3, normal, tier 4, slight flaw, tier 5, flaw, tier 6, huge flaw, and tier 7 breaks harmony. Her overall facial assessment breakdown. So these are the biggest things that I think are dropping her score a lot. So I'm just going to go through it real quick. Courtney's eye separation ratio in the front profile view is not ideal because her pupils are too close relative to her protrusive cheekbones, which this combination can completely break facial harmony. Her temple and jaw width does not harmonize well with the overly protrusive cheekbones. These measurements give her head shape a unique sculpture that does not produce the most appealing head shape. These are the rarity scores of your favorite celebrities, so I have it right here. Alright, so the first measurement, eye separation ratio. This is probably her biggest flaw, and it is at 41.4%, which is not within the ideal range. So I gave her a tier 6 for that. So that breaks harmony. Her facial thirds is a tier 1, which is ideal, and her middle third is longest, which is favorable. So that's good. Her canthal tilt is at 6.5%, which is very tilted, and it makes her eyes look youthful. So that's a tier 1 score. Her facial width to height ratio, how compact is her midface, which is at 1.95, and that is a tier 1, so that is ideal. Her jaw frontal angle is also ideal at the lower end of 87 degrees, which is also ideal. Her cheekbones height settingness, how high is her cheekbones relative to her face, and is at 67 degrees, and that is low set cheekbones, so this is a slight flaw. Her bigonial width, how wide is her jaw relative to her cheekbones, and is at 82%, which is at the normal range, but it's not at the ideal range. Her total facial height to width ratio, how tall is her face relative to how wide is her face, and it is at 1.28, so that is very close to the ideal range. Her chin to fill trim ratio is a tier 1, so that means that her fill trim is 1 to 2 of her chin, which is within the ideal range, and the ideal range is between 2 to 2.5. Her neck width, how wide is her neck compared to how wide is her cheekbones, and I usually go by cheekbones and not by the jaw width, and because the cheekbones is the head shape of the overall head, and it is a tier 1, which means that it is ideal, so that is a good sign. Her mouth to nose width ratio, so her mouth and nose should be within a ratio of about 1.6 or somewhere close to 1.6, which is within the golden ratio. And as you guys can see, it is not within that ratio at all. So what this means is that her nose is way too small relative to her mouth. She does have a wider mouth compared to her nose. So this is going to be a big flaw, and this does break harmony. Her mid-face ratio is 1 to 1, so that is ideal. So pupil to pupil relative to the eye line, right? The line between the eyes, all the way down to the top of her lip, and that should be 1 to 1, which it is. Her eyebrow settingness, how high is her eyebrows relative to her eye? And her eyebrow eye settingness is 0.94, which is at the higher end of the ideal range. So this will be considered to be mid to low. Her eye spacing, one eye test, is at 80%, which is within, actually this is outside of the ideal range, and it is a big flaw. So what this pretty much means is that her eyes, or her eye separation, is way too close together, and it needs to be separated just a little bit apart, at least around 90%, which it doesn't do that. And 80% is where you can kind of see a obvious flaw from the normal person's point of view. Her eye aspect ratio, does she have almond shaped eyes? Which she doesn't. Her eyes are more rounded shaped, and this is a flaw. A slight flaw, I would say. Her lower lip to upper lip ratio is at 1.5. This is a ideal and perfect ratio, and this is good. Her deviation from her mid face to her jaw frontal angle is a 12 degrees. You don't want this to be anywhere higher than 15, or it completely breaks harmony, which it is not, and this is within the normal range. Her eyebrow tilt is very tilted at 22 degrees, so this is going to be a slight flaw. Or not even a slight flaw, near ideal. Not a flaw, my bad, but near ideal. It's a little bit too tilted, I should say. Her bitemporal width, so how wide is her bitemporal bone? So how wide is her forehead compared to her cheekbones? And it is at 77%, which is at the lower end, so this will be a slight flaw. Her lower third proportions is good at 35%. It should be close to 33, which it is close to 33, so that's why it is within the ideal range. Her ipsilateral alar angle is at a tier 2, which is near to ideal at 99 degrees, and it does mean that she does have a wider set eyes in comparison to everything else. Her godial angle is at 122 degrees, and this is ideal jaw shape. So this means that she does somewhat have a sharper jawline. Her nasal frontal angle, this is to see how protrusive her brow ridge is, and this is a tier 2, so this is near ideal at 141 degrees, which is a little bit obtuse. The angle is a little bit obtuse, and this means that her forehead, or her nasal bridge to her brow ridge, is a little bit slightly obtuse. So if it just came in just a little bit more, if her forehead just came in a little bit more, that brow ridge just came a little bit more, it would have been within the ideal range. Her mandibular plane angle is at 17 degrees, so this is perfect, and that is ideal. Her ramus to mandible, she does have an extremely long ramus. I did cut slack off of this right here and say it is within the ideal range. Usually I wasn't really too sure if this would be within the ideal range, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt, and this is ideal at the upper end of it. Her facial convexity from the glabella is a tier 3, that's within the normal range, but she does have a little bit of a rounder facial convexity, which is a bad sign. Her submental cervical angle is a tier 2, so that is near ideal. Her nasal facial angle is a tier 4, so that is a slight flaw, so that's the relationship between the nasal bridge and the chin. Her nasal labial angle, that's to show how upturned or downturned the nose is, and her nose is upturned, which is good, especially for females because it's feminizing. Her orbital vector, how protrusive is her eyes relative to the bone, to the orbital bone, I should say, and it is positive, which means that her eyes are deep set and not protruding. Her total facial convexity is at 143 degrees, which is ideal. So that tells me that she got good total facial convexity. This is including the nose. The other one was not including the nose. So this one shows her total facial convexity, which means that her total facial convexity is not too rounded and it's just perfect. Her mental labial angle. Mental labial angle is at 135 degrees, and this is a slight flaw. She doesn't really have that much of a protrusive chin. She does have a chin, but just not protrusive enough. So that's why it's at 135 degrees at a slight flaw. Her facial convexity from the nasion is also very rounded, so her facial convexity is even more rounded when you get it at the nasion. So this is not ideal, and this is a slight flaw. Her nasal projection is a tier 2, so this tells me that her nose is not protruded enough, but it is close to the ideal range, but it's not all the way there yet. And the ideal range is at 55% for the nasal protrusion. And that is for women. 55% is for women. Her nasal width to height projection. So how long is the nose compared to how wide the nose is? And it's at 1.06, which means that she does have a stubby nose and that the nose length is short compared to the eye line. So it goes from the eye line all the way to the base. Her Ricketts E-line is a tier 3, so that goes from the tip of the nose all the way down to the chin. This is a lip measurement, and her upper lip is closer to the line than her bottom lip, so that is not ideal. And then the rest of her lip measurements are ideal. So this one is the H-line, goes from the tip of the top of the lip all the way down to the chin, and the bottom lip should be able to touch, which it does. Her S-line goes from the clamella, right? So that's like the base of the nose, or the middle of the nose, I should say, all the way down to the chin, and the upper lip and the bottom lip should touch the line. And then her bursal line, the upper lip is supposed to be a little bit ahead of the lower lip, which it is, and that is within the ideal range. Her nasal mental angle is at 129 degrees, so that's within the ideal range. And this shows a good relationship between her nasal bridge and her chin. This is another assessment. This is not including the facial convexity as well. So this will show the relationship between the nasal bridge and the chin. Her gonial to mouth relationship. So this shows how well the jaw body is, and it also shows if the gonian is below the it shows if the gonian is below the mouth line, which this is below the mouth line, and she does have a long ramus like I said before, so this measurement is ideal. Her recession relative to the Frankfurt plane angle. Now this is one of her biggest flaws is she does have a lot of recession from the chin. So this does affect multiple measurements by itself, and the main measurement that it affects is her facial convexities. It affects the facial convexity from the nasion and from the glabella, and it also does affect her, I think, nasal facial angle, I believe. So it affects 3 measurements altogether. So if she did have a more protrusive chin, this will actually benefit her a lot. So this is probably one of her biggest flaws in my honest opinion. And this is at a tier 3. Her brow ridge inclination angle is a tier 1. So this is ideal. So she does have a good brow ridge inclination for a female. And last but not least, the nasal tip is a tier 2. Her nasal tip is a little bit pointy at the tip of it, and this is near to ideal. So she really doesn't lose that many points or anything like that. So if you want me to do any other celebrity, make sure to tell me down in the description. I will put my email down. So make sure to tell me like if you want me to do a facial analysis for your own face, and I'll give you the instructions and I'll do it for free. And yeah, I'll just tell you what you are and what your rating is, and just a brief description of everything that you need to know. So yeah, that's it. I'm out.